So I was watching some clips of Mario 64 a few weeks ago, and I thought to myself, what if we just gave him a gun? And that's when I got the idea to turn Super Mario 64 into a first-person shooter. What if we turned Mario from an innocent Italian pipe-cleaning plumber into a cold-blooded, gun-slinging American? But before Mario heads down to his nearest gun shop in his Ford pickup truck packing a lip, I had to do some preparation to make this happen. Firstly, I needed to decide how I'll be making this. I've made my own game engine before using C++ programming, but I've never actually used a commercial game engine before, and since making an engine from scratch requires hard work and effort, which is overrated in my opinion, and also advanced math, which is... I thought it would be a good time to learn one now. I'll cut to the chase and say I tried both Unreal Engine and Unity and ended up liking Unity more, so this is what I'll be using. Secondly, I needed models to steal... Borrow. I'm a beginning Blender user, and I'm not trying to remodel the entire game. So, I hopped on my private jet and flew across the ocean. I jumped out and landed in Nintendo's HQ. I took down all their goons and made my way to the secret Mario 64 data room with Miyamoto himself guarding it. I defeated him by snapping his neck, and the Mario 64 data was mine. What? Okay, fine. So I googled Super Mario 64 models and found this site called Model Resource with all the models available for free download.
But the part about the jet is true, I swear.
So I've never actually made anything like this in Unity before. So I did what every beginning game dev does, and after a few Brackeys videos, I got the basic first-person character and models imported. For the gun models, I just used Google, and I'll leave a link in the description to the ones that I used. For the first-person shooter controls, I used Unity's template from their standard assets, but it ended up getting reworked by the end so much, and it just ended up like a shit show. But hey, the graphics look nice. So I decided to add 7 different types of weapons to the game. A pistol, mines, a shotgun, the Poltergust 3000, a sniper, an M16, and a rocket launcher. You can cycle through your weapons with Q, and they each do different amounts of damage to different enemies. After I got things and stuff set up, it was time to get the game-specific fundamentals in place. I started off programming coins and gave them this cool bobbing effect, which you'd think is simple enough to explain to a caveman, but actually it uses this thing called sine wave, which is, the easiest way to put it is line go up, line go down. Stars were also implemented, which were really easy. It's literally just a model that rotates, and when the player touches it, it disappears. Now that I had coins in place, I implemented NPCs that will sell you different guns for different prices at different points in the game. I went back to Model Resource and grabbed some Mario characters from different games I thought would fit well. I rigged them up, made some pretty simple idle animations, bada bing, bada boom, they look really snazzy in Unity's crisp rendering and animation engine. But what now? We need a way to tell the player that they suck. I mean, tell them they're doing great. So we need a text engine. But what's a text engine, you ask? It's literally just a way to give players words to read. You can get fancy with it and add pictures and borders, but I kept mine simple and true to the original game. I also made this custom menu that allows you to buy guns off NPCs. They talk to you, and then if you have enough coins, they prompt you to buy it with this menu. So now that we've got these fundamentals out of the way, we can start adding actual levels to the game. For those who don't know, there's 15 main stages, 3 boss stages, and some special stages. I won't be adding the special stages, but I'll be adding the 15 main stages and the 3 boss stages. Oh boy. So the agenda is to implement everything from these 18 total stages, and once that's complete, everything will be done. So I started out making a box, but not just any box. This is Unity, bitch, not some 93 megahertz looking ass MIPS processor. So when you shoot one of these boxes, it shatters. This is an effect in Blender called cell fracture. Basically, it splits up the object into bits and pieces based on some settings. I put the original box as a stand-in. Once it's shot, I swap in the fractured box and tell each piece of the fractured box to use physics and stuff to fall and crumble. Along with this, more generic objects were implemented, like a smaller box that you can shoot around because physics is fun when there's no numbers or equations involved, or my 11th grade physics teacher giving me my test back with a 14%. A coin post that you can ground pound like in the original, as well as ground pounding to go along with it. 2 types of switches, bars that can be destroyed with the rocket launcher. Now these generic objects are fun, but they don't add much life to the world of gun blasting Mario, so I thought it was time to start adding AI. Going into this, I didn't really have much of an idea on how to write proper enemy AI, and luckily I don't think the Nintendo 64 devs did either. So the most common way of writing enemy AI is using this thing called a finite state machine, or FSM for short. I'll keep it short and sweet. Basically, it just means you have your enemy such as a Goomba with all its data like position, rotation, and you give him a certain state, such as run, attack, wander. So if you want him to follow the player, I can make a follow player state and put him in this state. And when his position's close enough to the player's position, I can put him in an attack state. Now the attack state's simple. If the player's collider touches the Goomba's collider, it'll hurt the player. But how do we make the Goomba chase the player? Luckily, Unity has these built-in things called nav mesh agents that make pathfinding easy. Seriously, even an idiot could use it. You can just bake up a map and tell this thing to go anywhere on it and it'll do it. These are the fundamentals that I've written every AI with in this project. A finite state machine with pathfinding. So after animating the Goomba in Blender and many failed attempts of making him do what I want, I finally got his AI to an acceptable point where I was satisfied with writing my first AI ever. Now, just to do this 30 plus more times for the rest of the enemies in Super Mario 64.
Wait, what?
In the original Mario 64, when you kill an enemy, there's just kind of this poof cloud that appears. And this is far too unrealistic for a first-person shooter. So I downloaded a generic blood splatter from the internet and threw it in Unity's particle system and said, hey, draw 10,000 of these. And after some tweaking and playing around, I got a blood splatter effect that I was satisfied with. So now you can gruesomely kill Goombas and other enemies and see what physical harm you're really causing. And to coincide with this, I added a blood overlay to the player to reflect his health, which shows a blood mark on the center of the screen when you're really low, just so you're not trying to interpret the transparency of the image to figure out how much health you can really afford to lose. And speaking of UI, I needed to add some sort of pause menu so we're able to, well, pause, and as well view your progress, exit the level, and all that pause menu pizzazz. So after a solid 24 seconds of thinking, I came up with the most optimal and obvious layout and functionality for the pause menu, staying true to the original. Less is more, kids. But back to Bob-omb Battlefield, I ended up populating most of Bob-omb Battlefield with enemies like Bob-ombs, and I just needed to add a boss fight with King Bob-omb and the race with Koopa the Quick. But this is a first-person shooter, so let's give King Bob-omb a rocket launcher and make Koopa the Quick Scoper. So I was scrolling down Sketchfab and what? The Piranha-Zooka! Holy shit, that's perfect. So I came across a model by this guy named Dara Enor called the Piranha-Zooka, and I knew I had to put this in. So I rigged up the Piranha-Zooka to King Bob-omb, animated him, wrote some basic AI, and this is the final result. Alright, that's 1 out of 18 stages, and it only took me 3 days. So I wasted no time and got straight into making Whomp's Fortress. Now, Whomps and Thwomps are the main enemy of Whomp's Fortress. Who would have guessed? But the thing about them is, in the original game they flatten you, which is kind of hard to translate over to a first-person shooter. Without any special behavior, you just kind of get stuck. So to remedy this and add a bit of difficulty to balance out the fact that there's a total of 5 of these enemies throughout the whole stage, I made them insta-kill you and added this cool slide-down transition to show you getting crushed. There's also a star in the original game called Blast Away the Wall, where you have to shoot yourself out of a cannon to blast the wall away. But it doesn't really fit well with a first-person shooter, so now you can quite literally blast the wall away with a rocket launcher. Now, to address another concern with the original game, there's several levels where you need to use a cannon to get lots of height and speed. So to remedy this, I thought the most appropriate replacement would be to add a jetpack to replace all the cannon functionality and also replace the lack of special caps in the game that allow you to fly. It just ended up working out really well in the end. I added more stage-specific objects like this wooden plank you can shoot down, which you're supposed to kick down in the original, bullet bills, piranhas, and I added the King Whomp fight, which I made similar to the original game since I implemented ground pounding. And that was most of Whomp's Fortress. So next we're on to Jolly Roger Bay. The stage is very simple, the main focus is water mechanics, and it's very small. So I was able to make the stage very quickly, however I wasn't really sure how to program water. It's an ambiguous topic and I looked at a few resources online and in the end I just made the player slowly fall in a neutral state, quickly fall if holding control, slowly rise if holding space, and the ability to swim faster if holding shift. Plus this cool underwater fog effect that really sets the atmosphere. Cool Mountain was the next stage, and of course the infamous stage where you can kill a baby penguin in front of its mother by dropping it off the edge of the stage. So of course in this game about blasting things, Whoa guys, don't get any ideas. So I made the penguin invulnerable to bullets, and you get to shoot him around to his mother instead. This is just pure abuse of the physics engine at this point, but I really found it fun to just shoot him around, so I went with it. This stage also introduces slides, which function exactly like you'd expect them to. However, because my character controller was a complete mess of template stuff and my own code that would probably make Alan Turing himself stab his eyeballs out if he ever lived to see what C# was, I compromised and made it just speed you up instead and apply constant force to you. Regardless though, I did find this a lot more fun because you have a lot more control over all this speed. Top the stage off with spindrifts, snowmen, and sprinkle it off with this really nice snowflake particle effect to set the atmosphere. The cold, white, lonely, depressing atmosphere. Now next, the thing we all wanted as a kid, to get revenge on that damn piano. So I added the piano and the ability to blow him up with a rocket launcher so you can put that childhood trauma behind you in the most sane way possible. Some more subtle things were added during this stage. This really nice fire particle effect plus getting burned. Boos that behave exactly like they always do, so when you look at it, it freezes, and when you look away, it moves towards you. These eye enemies, it was a pretty mundane stage, so let's move on to the next. The first boss stage is the next one up, Bowser in the Dark World, and I was able to nearly mimic everything in the original stage. My favorite part of these is these amps that make this really cool looking particle effect. It's also my first Unity game, so I'm really just throwing as many polygons and particles as I can and seeing how much is too much. As if this game needed more nightmare fuel and polygons to draw, I thought Giga Bowser was a pretty intense and appropriate boss. All three boss fights act the same, you're just gunning down Nightmare Bowser except he has more health each time. Your weapons also do varying levels of damage as they would to any other enemy, so make sure you're getting some upgrades along the way. Bowser charges you and he'll either slash you or spawn fire. Meanwhile, there are these bullet bills firing at you and some other enemies. After he's killed, he grants you the key to the basement and you can unlock more stages, a nifty sniper rifle, and hey, you can buy a rocket launcher for whatever mischievous tasks you want to do with it. Next, I crossed Hazy Maze Cave and of course the fan favorite Dory in full HD and surround sound. Okay, well, she doesn't say much, but full HD at the very least. So you can ride Dory around and no, you can't shoot Dory with a rocket launcher. Now go away! More enemies like Scuttlebugs and Monty Moles were added mimicking the original game. I also implemented the haze that will slowly chip away at your health, just like this stage chipped away at my mental capacity after all the special object programming and debugging I had to do. Let's move on before the flashbacks resurface. Now, Lethal Lava Land's development was boring in the same way Big Boo's Haunt was. I implemented one new special enemy being the bully, but other than that, it was just a lot of niche object programming like this bridge, this log, these falling platforms. It wasn't really interesting, however, I did get to implement lava. It's a flat plane with a scrolling texture that slowly chips away at the player's health and plays a burn sound effect. It just mimics how I've seen lava done in most first-person shooters. Shifting Sandland turned out to be less dry than the desert itself. I implemented Klepto, and you have to use that new sniper rifle you gained from the basement to shoot it out of his talons. Next up was... Hey, wake up! Listen, I know it's the second water stage and it's small as hell, but blame the original dev team, not me. At least the music's good. Dire Dire Docks was a really quick stage. In fact, it was strung together with objects that were either generic or borrowed from Jolly Roger Bay as it was in the original game. I reworked the red coin puzzle so you can jetpack around and grab them rather than waiting on these annoying poles from the original. And when you spawn the stars underwater, this awesome shit show of a bug happens, and it's no surprise that it lies in the player code that I wrote earlier. I'm surprised Microsoft hasn't revoked my Visual Studio privileges at this point. The Nintendo 64 hardware was limited, and so were the amount of objects they could load in, so this stage mostly just borrows assets from other levels and doesn't really introduce anything new. I will go over this elevator though. I've never seen anything like this elevator in another game. All it's doing is scaling itself on the y-axis, and it's a very simple behavior, and it creates a really cool object in level design. I've never seen it in any other game, but I thought it was really cool. Come on, 21st century game designers, step your game up. The Bowser fight's the same, he just has double the health, double the bullet bills, and double the color red. After beating him, you obtain the upstairs key, and that unlocks the rest of the levels, and hey, an M16. Now, Tiny Huge Island was one that was pretty difficult to repurpose for the first-person shooter. Most of the base level was just converted, and a lot of the objects were already programmed from the previous stages, like Goombas, Chuckyas, Piranhas. The concept is cool and unique, I just personally never found it that fun to begin with, but regardless, the stage was pretty similar in the end. Only 3 stages left, and I'm already practicing my speech for when they call my name at the Video Game Awards 2021. Bowtie, tie. Bowtie, tie. Oh, right, it's not done yet. Where'd we leave off? Rainbow Road. So Rainbow Ride's an interesting stage. In the original, you have to wait and wait and wait on these annoying carpets just to get anywhere in the stage. And come on, I'm making a fast-paced AAA action shooter here. So I made it so you can run along these rainbows instead of waiting for these annoying carpets. Fix your stage, Nintendo. I'll be waiting for my check as senior game designer. And the final main stage, Tick-Tock Clock. I said Tick-Tock Clock. That's the wrong f***ing Tick-Tock Clock, goddammit. Now, Tick-Tock Clock was a cool stage because I had to replace almost no vanilla elements. It ported perfectly to the first-person shooter despite being probably the most outcast stage from the rest of them, and I was able to finish programming all the special objects in less than an hour. Most just rotating objects. It made the stage a really quick one to finish. No new enemies, no new mechanics, just a clock. Now going into the final Bowser fight and area, more health, more bullet bills, more purple, and clearly more originality than the last two Bowser stages. And that's it. That's all the stages. So I showed it to my friends and they said, "You're gonna get sued and f***ed by Nintendo." Well, not really, but you know, I had to address the elephant in the room. A long list of bugs and another day or two later, and I had it ready. After a month of hard work, dedication, learning, it's scuffed, it's fragile, the source code is a developer's worst nightmare. And lastly, if Nintendo has any concerns about me porting their classic 90s platformer into a first-person shooter, send me an email at idon'tgivashit@fuckyou.com. And that's it. That's how I turned Super Mario 64 from a classic Nintendo 64 platformer into a new age, wonderfully lit first-person shooter. If you have any requests or suggestions on future games I should turn into a first-person shooter, or other games with a twist on them, let me know in the comments. Or if you have any feedback on the videos and things you want to see more of, or if you just want me to go more in depth on topics, I'm open to that too. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.